a Keep Productive production. Welcome to the Tools They Use podcast. Interviews with professionals about how they use apps, software, habits, and routines every day.
Are you hampered by your emails? Do you spend ages clearing newsletters or even emails with lower importance that take attention away from moving the big projects forward? Well, does that sound like you? Because I was very much like this a few months ago, probably about 6 months ago. Then I started using SaneBox, a powerful email management tool that helped me to reduce that noise in my inbox. You can set reminders, train your emails into filtering automatically, even send large attachments in links, and heaps more. SaneBox is a mighty powerful application, and it is August 2019's Tools They Use sponsor, and it's amazing to have them back. This is one of the tools I pay for on a monthly basis, and I can't recommend trying it enough. I actually upgraded to their annual plan only a few weeks ago. All listeners can get a free 14-day trial to SaneBox and a lovely $25 credit to get you using the tool that offers so much. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Tools They Use podcast. I'm joined by Justin DeRose, and we've just been having a lovely conversation about everything from microphones to work, right? Just getting tired in general, right?
Yeah, it's work and not work and getting the day off and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, the thing is, this episode is going to be particularly fun because this episode is it's been like a two-parter for us anyway, because we've been chatting about it for a while. In the previous call, we literally carried it on and just talked about it. And I think it's going to be quite fun, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. And so what we were talking about previously that unfortunately didn't get in the episode because we shut the recording off was how you handle loneliness and relationships and stuff when you work remotely. And it's something that, since so many companies are moving to a remote sort of model, especially those that are very digital oriented, that people have to really consider and think about when they're taking a job that's especially primarily remote.
100%. And I think we talked a lot about, you've been in that position, you're currently in that position, and I've been in that position in the past. And there is that sort of you're thrown in the deep end because no one teaches this sort of stuff, that you won't be around other human beings. So I think today what we're going to do is we've put together 5 recommendations for those who are looking to curb their loneliness as a remote worker, and we're gonna dive in, aren't we? We're gonna dig deep.
Yes, we're gonna go to the very deepest annals of remote work loneliness today.
We are. And Justin, did you know you have got the honor of being the number 50 episode of Tools They Use?
Well, that's awesome. Thanks for having me on.
And we were just
glad I can help you celebrate.
Yeah, let's this is a celebration episode as well. But we were just chatting before. We're probably going to look at doing a few more of these sort of collabs because I think it'd be quite fun and quite cool. And so for those who don't know who Justin is already, Twitter name, Justin?
Justin DeRose, DIROSE. You can find me there. And then 2, we just rebranded my productivity community from the Productivity Guild to Effective Remote Work. So we're specifically focusing on trying to help remote workers become more effective at life and work altogether, because there's really no line between life and work. And it's especially the case when you're working remotely.
Definitely. And the thing is, loads of people talking that sort of work-life balance, and it's going to come into more play now because you'll literally need to be able to find the lines between which one's which.
Yeah, very true. And you got to set boundaries, and you got to have an idea and a vision for your life, because you don't necessarily have a manager that's talking over your shoulder or looking over your shoulder, making sure that you're going the direction that the company wants you to go. You kind of have to have an idea yourself of where you want to go in your career and where you want to go in your life to really be successful and effective.
100%. Did you see the product hunt the other day of I think it was called Netflix Hangouts?
No, I didn't.
Oh my God, I was laughing for ages. Someone's created this sort of video conferencing tool. They're basically you use Hangouts, but in one of the corners, it's Netflix playing.
That's hilarious.
So when you're in the office, or at least in the office, people walk by and it looks like you're on a conference call, but you're actually watching Netflix. It's mad, isn't it?
Oh boy.
Well, that's good for remote workers, at least.
Right, yeah.
We'll dive into these. Yeah.
You can have a YouTube video on all that you want when you're working from home. Nobody's going to know.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. That's one of the problems, though. I think we have to...
It really is, yes.
We'll address that near the end. Lovely. Well, let's dive in. And you were number one. So, Justin, take the show.
So, number one tip for dealing with loneliness while working remotely, I have found, is honestly disconnect. The biggest feeling of loneliness can come from feeling disconnected, whether that's from people around you or from the world around you, because you're sucked into a digital world through the computer and your phone and stuff all the time. And interestingly enough, for me, feeling disconnected oftentimes comes from being so connected all the time. So sometimes feeling lonely is a symptom of another problem, like not having space to process. And for me, when I'm connected all the time through my phone, through my computer, checking in on work, checking my email, keeping up on text messages or whatever's going on social media, my brain just gets totally overloaded. And a lot of times when I end up in that place, I end up feeling just completely down and lonely and like I really just need connection with people. But in reality, I just need some space. I need some time away from all these infinite feeds of the internet and just to let my brain catch up. I know Chris Bailey in his book, Hyperfocus, talks about two different concepts of focus that our brains need to be healthy and to be productive. Hyperfocus, which is essentially deep work, like Cal Newport talks about in his book, and then scatter focus. Scatter focus is basically letting your mind wander and connect ideas, and this is what recharges your brain so that you can focus more deeply. So the ways that I do that is I get out of the house, I take a walk, I journal, I just lay on my bed and let my mind run until it just stops, because sometimes it does actually stop. But I remember I need to do this away from the infinite feeds of the internet. The other thing that often comes up for me too with feeling disconnected with the internet and being so connected all the time is FOMO, fear of missing out. Mm-hmm. And the best way to approach that is to stop evaluating the reality of your life against other people's highlight reel on social media. And that's really hard to do. But being aware of that, being aware that that whole concept of FOMO and that other people are just posting all their best moments on the internet and not necessarily showing all the ugly of life when you're feeling all of it and experiencing all of it, just being aware that that's happening is probably the biggest step to not being influenced by it.
Yeah, I didn't really even think of that like as a thing that would affect it, but I guess it does, because you're literally like, when you do get connected, at least it feels like you're in this sort of preconceived sort of world that everything on the outside looks clean and dusty, and that can really that can only reinforce your negativity around it. Yeah,
totally.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, it gets to be. Sorry, I've got kids screaming in the background, so if you hear that, I apologize.
I didn't even hear that.
Okay, all right. That's how good this microphone is, Francesco. You should get one.
I'm gonna buy it after this one. If it blocks out anything, then happy days.
Yeah. Well, so I'll give an example of like how for example, my kids react when I take my notebook out and I'm writing ideas down and they're maybe playing with something. Yeah. They're totally fine. But when I pull my phone out just to respond to a text message for 5 seconds, they freak out. They notice something's different with my attention. And I think that affects us all relationally at some subconscious type of level when we're dealing with digital devices. I don't have science or anything to prove that, just these conjectures that I've made from watching how my kids and my family and myself respond to it. But I can only imagine that when we live in such a digital world that we're experiencing something like that too, where we feel more disconnected because we're spending so much time on our devices. Not that that's a bad thing, but we just have to temper it with things that are disconnected and things that are real and real relationships with people in front of us.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to have to get more advice when I have kids from you, because that's it. I think it's almost like it's instilled that your attention is sort of completely gone when you take out your phone. Like, and it's the same like even with social events these days. Like,
right,
taking your phone out is like literally it takes you away from that sort of meal, that experience, and I think it's definitely something that will. I guess disconnecting is a massive. I think that's why it's number one on the bleeding list, because it's one of the biggest things that you need to do as a remote worker.
Yeah, and it's really something. It's funny to think that disconnecting contributes to feeling connected to people. You know, I mean, if you think about it, because you're really just thinking about, well, I'm just working on my computer and I'm not really interacting with people. But like, even just the fact of like, shut your phone off, walk away, put it in a bedroom or something when you're out. Because I don't know, for me, when I have my phone in my pocket and I'm walking around the house, even with my kids, like I'm so drawn to that. And so then I'm not even mentally and emotionally present to be able to be connected with the people that are going to fill the need that I have for connection. So
that's it. Yeah,
it's kind of crazy how it all works, and it's really interesting just to see how this whole spectrum of technology is playing out for us right now. And I guess we'll figure it out eventually, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I'd just add to that the one thing that helped me, particularly when I was working in my old flat, was that I would just go down to like the local park and literally just sit there on the bench and just enjoy stuff go by. Sometimes bring my journal, and that massively helps. So yeah, I can't say that enough. Yeah,
totally.
Lovely, brilliant. Well, number 2 is one of my recommendations is local gym. Do you have a gym membership?
Justin? No, I don't, and that's something that well, okay. The struggle with that is that I live pretty far away from the gym. I mean, granted, I live in a small town. It's like 15-minute drive to the decent gym in town, but it's just enough friction to not really be able to get there very often.
To get in the car, yeah. No, well, that's it. Like, even I guess you could do this with the same model with home workouts, but the one thing that I found, at least since remote working, was I was like, okay, so I get to develop some form of schedule for myself during the day, because my commute's gone. It's 30 minutes there, would have been 30 minutes back. So I take at least 30 minutes and I put it into the local gym. And at least when I was in the city, I'd go to the gym one, which was only a 10-minute walk. So it's not a drive in anywhere.
And plus you can walk there too. So you're getting exercise on the way to the gym as well as on the way home.
2 birds with one stone. And that was like one of my biggest remote work hacks, because I was almost like throwing myself around other people. Like, the gym was busy, you don't interact much with people in the gym, but I think sometimes when you're stuck at home and you're like getting a bit like lonely or even thinking about stuff and overthinking stuff, going and taking yourself out, 1, to be around people, and 2, to sort of get that blood rushing in your body, can have a massive impact, because you just start producing ideas and the quality of work in the afternoon tends to go up. That's what I found anyway.
Yeah, and I've actually heard it said before that in order to recharge from draining yourself mentally, you need to do something physical. And to recharge physically, you need to do something mental. So it totally makes sense that going to the gym and you're investing yourself physically in something, you're actually giving your brain a break to be able to
that's it.
Kind of step into that scatter focus mode too, where you're recharging and letting your brain just kind of go everywhere.
Yeah. And that's been one of my top hacks. Even as just like, I just literally take the 30-minute visit and I call it a day. And then occasionally I'll go for like a 30-minute run in the afternoon, but that's normally on if I'm very eager that day.
Right. Yeah. Good old hour-long exercise in the day, right?
Jesus. Yeah, number 3 now. I think that's I got to read this one earlier, and I actually thought it was a really good idea. So you take it away, Justin.
Yeah, so I'm a songwriter as a hobby. I love music, and I've kind of done this all on my own for a while. In the summer, I actually got connected with a few other people who like to write songs too. And so we started a songwriting group. And honestly, hobbies are one of the easiest ways to get connected to other people that you don't know. And so this tip is to join or start a local hobby group. Honestly, like,
good idea.
There's hobby groups out there for everything, like photography, board games, music, writing, reading, and they're everywhere. And so, and if they're not in your community, there are other people who probably want to have them in the community. And so it's a great time to create a shared experience with other people around a common interest. And that's really the beginnings of creating connection and relationship with other people. And it gets you out of the house. You get to meet others. You get to work on a passion project. And ultimately, especially if you're just working at home all the time, you're not really going anywhere. And like me, if you have kids, you might not even really get the opportunity to take very many vacations or trips. It ultimately gives you something to look forward to.
100%. And if, like, let's say you're someone who's maybe a bit too shy to start a local hobby group, have you found like a good place, or at least some apps or resources to find local hobby groups?
Honestly, like, for me, like I mentioned earlier, I live in such a small community. There's nothing really digital for us. So I haven't really gotten into that. But, you know, if you're in a smaller town, I know usually like at coffee shops and stuff, they have these like bulletin boards where you can post announcements. And a lot of times just skimming those places, if you're going somewhere to work for the day, you know, checking those out and seeing if there's something of interest there. Or even like usually like shops that are related to that type of hobby. So if there's a, you know, camera shop or a, you know, a game store or something, like we've got a few in town here, you can walk in, ask them if there's any groups that meet that play a particular game that you're interested in, or any photography clubs. They usually know of those type of things because those are the people that frequent those locations.
That's it. And I don't know about you, but I feel like more these days, it's like a lot of remote workers have social media,
right?
And, like the Twitter presence, because you want to be able to connect with people around the world. And I feel like at least having like a hobby or an interest, it like separates you from the crowd in terms of like you can share not just your work and your remoteness, but you can share your hobby and interest. Do you find that?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think so. And especially if you're looking at some kind of a creative craft. I mean, there's so much pressure these days to just put your stuff out there for the world to see it, and whether it's good or not. And sometimes you just need a space where you can get feedback from a couple of people who are maybe a little further along in the journey than you are, in order to really hone your craft. You know, because we don't need people that are just slamming our stuff down because they don't like it or they think they're better than we are at it. What we do need is we need someone to come alongside of us and say, hey, I really like that picture that you took, and here's some ways that you might be able to improve taking a picture the next time. And a lot of times these clubs or groups are good places to find those kinds of connections.
Yeah, it's like a no judgment zone, but
totally
for your hobby. And that's good. Yeah.
So then you can start to hone that. And then when you want to put it online, when you feel like you've gotten to a place where you feel comfortable doing that, then you can. You're not just forced to just throw everything, whether it's good or not, out into the world for the world to judge. Because frankly, the world can be a little bit of a tough place sometimes for that, and sometimes discouraging.
You know what? At least in the UK, what is popping up a lot is coffee shops with board game evenings, and people have been loving it. Has it been happening in the US?
Yeah, you know, I don't have any locally here, but I've heard of them happening in different places. I know I read a book a while back called The Revenge of Analog, and there's actually a whole chapter in there about board games. And there is a place in Canada, I think, that really popularized the concept, and they're very successful at it, where they even have a guy on staff who is like, a sommelier for board games, where you ask him, like, say, hey, we like these kind of board games. What kind of other board games are similar to this that you think we might like? And he'll go over to the shelf and he'll pick this one off and he'll say, hey, you probably like this because of these reasons, and you're not going to like that one. So
that's sick. That's like a wine connoisseur of board games.
Totally. Yes.
That's amazing. I want one of them. Jesus.
I know.
That would be good. Number 4 is, for me, talking on this sort of coffee shop subject, it's a really small thing, I feel, but befriending coffee shop baristas. I don't know, do you go to coffee shops often in your town?
Yeah, in fact, we've got a couple of decent ones where I go to. The only downside is that they need a little technical help to get their Wi-Fi a little better.
I know what sort of thing.
The bane of the remote worker is having a poor Wi-Fi connection in an ideal location to work.
Well, the good thing with befriending coffee shop baristas on the topic, when I was in my last coffee shop, they hooked me up on their staff Wi-Fi because I was in there so often. I was like, this is ideal, because everyone else was complaining about the Wi-Fi, and then so that's one of the benefits to.
It sure is.
But like that whole concept of like, I guess like having a patronage, is it called that? Like where you routine go to coffee shops, and is that the right word?
Something like that.
Yeah, you're like a patron of the coffee shop, and people know who you are, and that can really, especially when you're at home and you're feeling lonely, you're like, well, I can go to the coffee shop and, Katie and, all the other people know me. And that's like a really nice, at least it feels like you've got a sort of friendship group to some extent.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, I mean, too, depending on the work that you're doing, sometimes those connections can open other connections to things that would never open up otherwise.
Yeah, and like that could lead to, if you're a freelancer or anyone like that could lead to more potential work accidentally. Like the coffee shop could be looking for a website developer to redevelop a website. So, you never know what's going to come of it.
The coffee shop could be looking for an IT contractor to improve their Wi-Fi. Who knows?
Yeah, they could be looking for a Discord community, all that sort of stuff. So
right, yeah,
it's gonna be sick. But yeah, that's one of my that's my final one. Justin, you have number 5. Take it away.
Yeah, and again, this is one of those kind of bigger picture strategies with some tactical tips to it. So ultimately, to prioritize your relationships over your work. Because when working remotely, it's really easy to let work creep into all hours of the day. I was actually really struggling with this last week because so after reading Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, Francesco and I were. It kind of ruined me. It kind of ruined me, and so I actually, on my iPhone, I turned off Safari, I turned off Mail. I really just tried to make it into a utility device instead of this device where it has all of this information that's at my fingertips all the time, because I was finding myself getting very distracted by that. And with that, especially like moving into working for Discourse, which is a remote only company that has employees all over the world, there's work going on 24/7. So I could flip open, one of our Discourse instances that we use to track work and stuff, and there'd be tons of topics and stuff to read through in there. And so it's really easy when you work remotely and asynchronously and all over the world, especially, for that work to creep in. And I'm sure you found, Francesco, that being self-employed and doing what you love is challenging to disconnect from it at times too.
Oh yeah, like we just get carried away. Like you just want to do the majority of it as much as you can, but I mean, you probably found it with the community that you've ran in it for the last couple of months at least. You get carried away with comments. You're like, I want to help that person. I need to reply to this. I need to send him this link, and you get carried away because you absolutely just you want to share all these good stuff with other people, like tools or software or courses or presentations. And
Yes.
yeah, you literally go, oh my God, it's 5 o'clock. I need to switch off.
Yeah,
it's a big one.
Or okay, my kids are in bed now. I have to get to work on this thing that has been pressing me in my mind for the last week to get done.
Yeah.
You know,
oh my God.
It's tough, you know, and especially like if you're working, I'm doing the side hustle thing along with having a full-time job, so it's especially challenging to try to juggle those boundaries sometimes. But you have to have boundaries, and so I know for me, kind of what I've been focusing on for boundaries, and it's been flexing a little bit lately because my life has been in transition too. We're looking to move here soon, houses and stuff, and so there's a lot going on. But I try to make sure that I have good time boundaries set for my work. So anytime, usually prior to 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning, and between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. at night are no work zones, because that's family time. Usually my kids wake up early, so I get a little bit of time before I have to start work in the morning to spend time with them. And then 6 to 8 p.m. is dinner time and time to play with them before they go to bed. And then after that, it's fair game generally. You know, usually my wife and I will hang out, but that's important too, to invest in, you know, if you're married or you have a significant other, to invest in that relationship too.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing is, you just like, it's like putting the sort of stake in the ground and just saying, right, this is my rules. And it won't be done overnight. Like, at least my routine took a couple of years to get to. I remember like, it was like Thursday evenings, I would just like work every night. And that just like was bad. I found it the worst when I lived for a year. My wife now, but she was my girlfriend at the time. We were spending a year apart, and I came back from a year working for a company, and this wasn't remotely, but I literally had spent all that time working because I had nothing else to do.
Sure.
And I would then come back, and I'd have to adjust massively. So it's not something that I don't think will happen overnight, but as soon as you made those rules and those rituals, like, it'll pay off massively.
Absolutely. And the truth is too, is that, and it's one thing that I've been talking a lot about over on my podcast, Process, is it changes too. You have different seasons of life and you have different needs, and one job may require one set of boundaries, and then you might have kids, you know, and then it requires another set of boundaries. And then, you know, you change jobs and that requires another set of boundaries. And so, I mean, when stuff in life changes, you get a routine set and it's great, but you also have to be flexible because needs change too. And I know it'll be way different like when my kids get into school, because they'll have after school activities, they'll have to get to school, have to pick them up from school, things like that. And that'll change the dynamic of what all that looks like as well. Now, I know one of the other things that I had on my list here that helps me prioritize relationships over work is to at least try to, on a weekly basis, get social time on the schedule, whether you're scheduling like dinners with friends or somebody that you get together with lunch, or you get together for lunch on a regular basis, or date nights. Ultimately, you have to build the margin in your calendar for social time, because as we talked about, it's very easy for work to creep into every little bit of space that you have. You know, it's like Parkinson's law, I think, where work expands to the time allotted to it. And if you don't allot time to it, it just kind of eats up all the time.
Yes, definitely. And do you have like a set time that you switch off? Like, did you set like a weekly time, or like, is it literally just like the same daily, or do you have like themed days?
Well, that's been the challenge, to be honest. You know, I'm only a couple months into the job that I have right now, and so I'm still working out some of the routines. But everything's been so in flux too. You know, we have like inspections that we have to go to, or we got to go sign papers, and so I've got to take time away from work in the middle of the day. And so while I generally try to reserve at least one day a week where I'm not doing work and it's solely devoted to family time, and that's usually Saturday, it really just depends on how the week has gone, and we just try to schedule around it and be flexible. Because ultimately, my family's my priority. I make decisions on how it affects my family generally, and some other factors as well. But if if my family needs attention, I'm going to set aside some time so that they get it.
That's it. Yeah. I think you can definitely, like, when you get started with remote work, you can get carried away with just forgetting about that, and not in a harsh way. It's like you want to over exceed people's expectations when you're working remotely, because you not got that presenteeism that you're sort of like, you're like, oh my god, that person who's in the office is doing better than me because they are there, if that makes sense. And you're like,
totally.
If that's you've got a company that still has that sort of disconnect or works in a different country.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I dealt with that a little bit working the corporate job that I had previously. I was essentially a remote worker the whole time.
Yeah.
And, I had to be really diligent about making sure I was communicating enough, making sure that I was getting my work done at a high quality level, because I was working out of a remote office. And it's essentially the same as working remotely, to be honest, because no one was looking over my shoulder. I had no coworkers in the office that were in the same role or even same division of the company that I was in. And everybody was remote. Everybody else was remote. And most all of them were co-located in the same community. And so I was just kind of flung off in the far reaches of northern Minnesota away from everybody else and had to deal with that. And so it's a very real thing. And, the nice part about having generally a corporate job, and especially if you're in some kind of an hourly role, is that usually if 5 o'clock rolls around, you're done. You're clocked out. It's easy to do that. But if you're in some kind of a salary role, or your company is working all hours of the day or is working across multiple time zones, it's really hard, because there's always something going on and always something to be done.
Yeah. I do feel like, I feel at least it's getting better, like the whole remote work thing. Like, there's less micromanagement, more focus on health. And I feel like companies are slowly getting it, that if you put more attention into people overall, they will stay with you longer and work for you harder, or smarter at least.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot of potential in the capacity for remote work, but there's also a lot of potential to mishandle it too. I've been reading the book, The Year Without Pants, which I don't know if you've heard about that.
Oh my God, that sounds like a book I need to read.
Yeah, I've got it right here. It is by Scott Birkin. Okay. And it's about he was hired on to Automatic, which is the makers of WordPress. Then they're a 100% remote company. And he's basically talking about in that book, remote culture, and how culture is the center of it, because you can have all these perks and awesome things like, hey, take as much time off as you need, or hey, you've got freedom to do what you need to do and make decisions. But without having the culture that effectively supports that, that's the challenge, because the culture defines action. You can throw as many benefits to people as you want, but if you're still not really cultured well for remote work, then it's going to suffer or be very challenging to implement well. But I would have to say that like Discourse, the company that I work for, and other remote companies like Doist, even Automatic, they do a really good job of kind of setting the pace of what a remote company looks like, giving their people freedom to make decisions, be involved, to really have authority to do things within the company, and have an influence on where their products go. Because I think where people get disconnected with work as well is because they feel like they don't have ownership.
Yes.
And so when you give somebody authority, you're effectively handing them the keys and saying, you own this. What are you going to do with it?
Yeah, that's it. And I feel like these companies, some of these like sort of big companies that offer like unlimited holiday, and you're like, that is mainly to lure people in because the chances are that people are going to take that much holidays because of the culture that is set, because it's not like a relaxed or, a culture that embraces it. They're just like, oh my God, I'm not going to take that because I'll look like a freak, or I will be pushing and I won't be able to get my job done. But whereas with like remote culture, at least in the moment, a lot of the time it's quite open to those sorts of concepts, and people won't abuse it, but they understand it. It's more welcoming, I'd say.
Absolutely. And it's that culture exactly that makes it so great for people who are open to dealing with some of the challenges that come with working remotely, because whether you're working in the office or whether you're working remotely, let's be honest, there's trade-offs.
Yeah.
You've got to evaluate those. And frankly, sometimes working remotely is hard for some people and some personality types. And this was actually going to be a little bonus suggestion for this episode, is that if you find yourself having a really difficult time working remotely and you've tried it, you've talked to your superiors and stuff to try to figure out how to make it work, and you're not making it work, it's okay to not work remotely anymore.
Yeah, that's it. Like, I feel like that's like a thing that people don't understand. Like, people look at it and go, oh, it looks so good, but you might not be it might not work for you.
Yes. Yeah. And so you just got to be sensitive to yourself with that, because I mean, if you're getting, depressed or dealing with something like that, I mean, I've been there in my life before. It's not the most fun place to be. And honestly, you need people around you who understand what's going on and can, invest in your life and have a relationship with you to really get through some of those seasons, as well as handling the issues that are there that are causing that to occur. And sometimes it's just a biological thing too, but, sometimes it's just not the best time or season or best fit for a person to work remotely. And that's totally okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
100%. Yeah. And I don't think people should kick themselves too much about it. And it's just like, sometimes remote work actually takes a lot of preparation. And normally what I recommend to people who are like looking to somehow secure a remote work agreement with an existing boss is like to take your time with it and actually convince the person in an effective way that doesn't push you too far out, like working extra hours for the sake of remote work,
right?
And even like to trial remote work, like even if it's like for you could say to your boss, like, why don't we trial it for a month? Because then at least you've got a get out of jail free card if it doesn't work for you. And they have a get out of jail free card if they don't find it doesn't work for them as well. So their concept is like trying before you buy, really.
It really is, and that's one of the key ways to influence the culture at a workplace too, that maybe isn't super remote friendly at the time. You can always say, hey, would you be open to your supervisor? You can say, would you be open to me working from home for 1 day a week for this month? Let's see how it goes, because here's why. Then you list out
idea than just a month.
I get pulled into meetings 3 times a day that I wasn't invited to. So that means that I'm spending 3 hours less a day working on these essential tasks that you want me to. If I get 1 day, I can get all of those things done. Things like that. I mean, traditional office environments often, while they're great to, serendipitously connect with people sometimes, and meet other people in the company and build relationship that way. Sometimes they can also be extremely distracting. And I know that's one of the reasons that people love the idea of remote work, is that you can just be at home, do your work, get it done. But as we're talking about today, it can also just consume everything.
That's it.
It's about finding the balance in there between work and life and relationships and all of that, throughout the whole process.
The one thing I do miss about working for an office, I worked for a startup for actually it was more like 4 years overall, but 1 year full in the office. and then we agreed a sort of reduced hours remote work agreement. Was actually we used to have these plastic swords in the office, and we used to have little fights, and it was pretty beautiful things. It kept you active, but at the same time, it was nice to be around people for sure.
That's awesome. I know I worked for a small IT company here in town, and me and the other guy who were working there primarily would very often get into Nerf gun fights.
Oh my God, that is even smarter than sword fights.
Yeah. But you can't get into a Nerf gun fight across the internet.
Oh my God, no,
well,
you can't.
You might be able to. You might be able to.
We should try it.
Drone technology and AI and stuff these days. You might be able to get into a Nerf gun fight if you tried real hard. But
I think we're gonna have to do a Nerf gun fight in person if we ever if I ever fly over. I think before we do anything, it's a Nerf gun fight first.
Okay, sounds good.
Lovely. Justin, just to wrap things up, where can everyone find you? And enjoy some of the content you're already putting out.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at Justin DeRose, as Francesco mentioned earlier in the episode. You can also find my productivity community and courses at effectiveremotework.com. The community is at community.effectiveremotework.com, and I also have a podcast called Process, and that will be at podcast.effectiveremotework.com.
Lovely. And we are looking to do more of these sort of things together. This was our first ever it was like dual content where we both worked on this together and then we put it out. And I think it worked quite nicely, don't you think? Yeah,
totally. I mean, it's you see it happen in other shows and stuff sometimes, but it's a nice switch up for your format for sure.
Yeah, and it's like it's weird because I've never done anything like that, but I quite enjoyed it. And the thing is, we went off on really good tangents, so perfect.
Awesome.
Lovely. Well, thanks, Justin, for coming on. And if you are new to Tools They Use, make sure you're subscribed. And we will see you guys in a future feature. Thank you very much, Justin, and we will talk soon.
Are you a subscriber on the Keep Productive YouTube channel? If not, you'd love it. Software reviews and news. Just search for Keep Productive on YouTube for weekly videos. Thanks for listening to the Tools They Use podcast, a Keep Productive production. See you next time.